The man in the black hoodie never saw the rifle move. 1 second he was smirking in front of the guard, hands loose like he was touching gloves before a fight. The next, the soldier's boot stamped once on the stone. A blur of red and black stepped forward, and the barrel of the SA-80 snapped up in a single controlled arc that stopped half an inch from the man's throat. The crowd gasped. The man's back hit the palace railing so hard it rattled. For the first time that afternoon, the MMA fighter's eyes showed something that wasn't arrogance. It was fear. And then the guard spoke. Just one sentence, in a calm, clipped voice that froze him where he stood. Everything that followed started long before that rifle moved. Hours earlier, Buckingham Palace had looked like it always did in the late afternoon. Grey, London sky. Haze hanging just above the golden gates. Phone screens glowing as tourists pressed up to the railings, talking in low voices so their own videos wouldn't get ruined by their laughter. The steady echo of boots on stone, that unmistakable rhythm of discipline that older men remember in their bones. On post at the left side of the gate stood Guardsman Thomas Hale. He was in his late 30s, older than most tourists realized when they looked at the bearskin and the red tunic and thought, kid. Lines at the corners of his eyes, a faint scar across his jaw that disappeared under the strap of his bearskin. The kind of man who didn't fidget, didn't shuffle. He simply occupied his post, the way a granite statue might. He had served at 12 years, Afghanistan, training detachments. Silent night patrols where any wrong move meant someone didn't go home. Now he stood at Buckingham Palace, performing a duty older than the country of half the people filming him. To some, it looked like a costume. To him, it was a promise. On the other side of the railings, weaving through the crowd, was a man whose name the internet would repeat for weeks. Liam, the Anvil, Mercer. He was in London for a fight that weekend. A light heavyweight, known for his chin and his ability to walk through punches that should have ended him. Broad shoulders under a fitted black hoodie. Cauliflower ears. The kind of swagger that comes from 10,000 hours in a cage with another man trying to take your head off. He wasn't drunk. That would have been easier to explain. He was something more dangerous than drunk. He was bored, wired from training, and hungry for more attention than even the cameras inside the arena could give him. His younger cousin, Erin, followed close behind, her phone already in her hand. She had suggested Buckingham Palace as Tenewat for content. A simple vlog, London, landmarks, fight week. But then they saw the guards. They heard the crowd whispering. They're not allowed to move. They can't react no matter what you do. You can't make them flinch. And something inside Liam Mercer woke up. A different kind of fight. He slowed as soon as he spotted Thomas on the left side of the gate. The red tunic, the rifle, the stillness that annoyed men like him, without them knowing why. Erin felt his pace change. What? She asked, raising the phone to get a good shot of the palace. He didn't answer her at first. He just stared at the guard, the way he stared at his opponents at weigh-ins. What if he could move? He muttered. Erin frowned. Liam, don't start. But he was already somewhere else in his head, standing under arena lights with the roar of a crowd in his ears. Only this time, the crowd was tourists, and the opponent was a man in a bearskin who wasn't allowed to break character. Or so Liam thought. Little did he know that the man under that bearskin had more real-world combat experience than anyone Liam had ever faced. They slipped into a gap between a family from Spain and an elderly couple from Yorkshire. The older man from Yorkshire, grey hair and a weathered face, glanced once at Liam and looked away. Then he did a double take when he saw the fighter's profile. Recognition stirring. That's that lad from the fights, he whispered to his wife. The American one. Don't get involved, she murmured. It would be hours before he wished he had said something more. Liam took his position by the railings, directly in front of Thomas. He leaned on the metal, elbows up, eyes studying every detail like he was watching fight tape. "Get this." "Yeah," he said to Erin without looking at her. "Liam, I'm serious," she whispered. "They've got rules here. We'll get kicked out." "That's the point," he said. "People don't watch boring. They watch lines getting pushed." In front of them, Guardsman Hale did what he had been trained to do. He stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on a point beyond the crowd, rifle held at the correct angle, weight balanced, not locked, ready to move if protocol demanded it. He had seen men like this before. Not in hoodies, not with phone cameras, but in bars, in small towns near bases, in markets overseas. Men who needed to prove something. Men who thought discipline was just stiffness instead of a weapon. Another guard marched past on his pattern. Boots, stone, the familiar echo. Tourists lifted their phones. Liam smiled. He waited for the other guard to pass, then leaned closer to the railing, pitching his voice just loud enough to carry. "Hey, soldier," he said. "You any good without the statue act?" No movement, no reaction, not even a flicker. The only sign Thomas Hale had heard was the slight tightening of the muscles in his jaw, invisible from the outside. He had heard worse in far uglier places. Next to Liam, Erin winced. "Liam, stop. Come on. Just get a nice video and let's go." But Liam had seen something, or thought he had. Maybe it was his imagination. Maybe it was the faintest shift of a boot, the smallest change in the air between them. In his fighter's brain, he read it as challenge. "You know who I am?" Liam asked, raising his voice. A few heads turned. He wanted that. "I'm Liam Mercer," he called out. "MMA, light heavy. I hear you lot aren't allowed to fight back." The crowd murmured. Someone near the back actually laughed. Someone else tutted in disapproval. A father with 2 kids on his shoulders lowered them down and pulled them away a little, sensing something he didn't want his children standing too close to. On the far right, one of the palace wardens, in dark suit and tie, started making his way through the crowd. He had seen this pattern too many times. Tourist, ego, a phone, a guard. It rarely ended well. "Sir," the warden said when he got close enough, his voice calm and professional, "I'm going to have to ask you to step back from the railings and show some respect to the guardsmen. They're here performing a duty, not for your entertainment." Liam turned. The warden was a small man, mid-50s, with tired eyes. Respectable, harmless, easy to ignore. "Relax," Liam said. "I'm just talking. Free country, right?" "Sir, I understand," the warden replied, "but you're creating a disturbance. Please, step back now." Erin tugged at Liam's sleeve. "Let's go," she whispered. "We've got training in an hour. Coach will lose it if you get into trouble." Liam shrugged her off. He smelled the crowd's attention now, like blood. Phones were up. Lenses pointed his way. People were already whispering his name. "You know what I'm trying to understand?" he said, turning back to the guard, his voice again just loud enough for everyone to hear. "What happens if someone actually challenges you? Not just a tourist waving hands, a real fighter." He slapped his own chest. "I'm offering a sparring match," he called out. "Man to man. No guns, no costumes. Just you and me. I'll even let you throw first." There was an uneasy ripple through the crowd. The Yorkshire pensioner shook his head slowly. "This isn't right," he muttered. "That man's not playing with a full deck." His wife put a hand on his arm. "Leave it," she said. "They've got security." She was right. 2 more wardens were moving in now, along with a Metropolitan Police officer who had been standing near the gate. Radio at his shoulder, baton at his belt. Expression already set in that careful neutral line they wear when they know something is about to go wrong. The officer stepped in between Liam and the railings. "All right, sir," he said. "You've had your fun. Time to move on." Liam's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to hearing no. Not from promoters, not from sponsors, not from the drunk men who sometimes tried to square up to him in bars and backed down once they learned his name. Is it illegal to talk? He asked. It's illegal to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, the officer replied evenly. And right now, you're getting very close to that. Step away, please. Liam took half a step back, enough to satisfy the letter of the request, not enough to actually leave. Fine, he said. I'll stop talking to him. For a moment, it seemed like it might end there. People shifted, disappointed but relieved. A few put their phones down. The warden exhaled quietly and stepped back, nodding thanks to the officer. But then everything changed, because Liam Mercer knew cameras. He knew that what held people wasn't the first bad moment, it was the second. The one where someone who should have known better doubled down. He took a long, exaggerated breath and raised his hands like he was about to address an arena. Ladies and gentlemen, he called out, spinning slowly so the crowd encircled him in his own mind. I get it. Rules, guards, tradition. He pointed back at Thomas with his thumb, as if the guardsman were a prop in his show. But where I'm from, if a man stares you down like that, doesn't blink, doesn't even look at you, we settle that in the gym. His eyes slid back to the impassive face under the bearskin. It'd be interesting to see what happens if he wasn't hiding behind a gun, wouldn't it? The officer stepped forward again. Sir, do you hear that? Liam cut him off, cocking his head. The crowd had gone quieter, no more laughter, just the buzz of phones recording, the distant cooing of pigeons, the steady ticking of the palace clock somewhere above. That's attention, Liam murmured. That's numbers. That's why we're all here, right? He glanced at Erin. Her face was pale, but the phone was still recording. Caught between fear and the knowledge this would blow up online. Liam, please, she whispered. You're going to ruin everything. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped right up to the railings again, one hand resting lightly on the metal. He dropped his voice now, so only the people closest and the camera's microphone could hear. You ever throw a punch in your life? He asked the guard softly. Or do you just march and pose? Behind the unblinking gaze, Thomas Hale made another minuscule adjustment. Not of posture, of mind. He shifted from observe and ignore to observe and prepare. He knew the protocol as well as he knew how to breathe. Do not engage with verbal provocation. Maintain composure. Call for assistance via warden or officer, if necessary. Only act physically if a member of the public crosses certain clear lines. Those lines were written into his training. They were also written into something older. The knowledge that there are places in this world you do not turn into a stage for your ego, however many cameras are pointing. The first small line was crossed when Liam slapped the railing. The second when he leaned in so close, his breath could almost be felt. It wasn't enough yet, not by itself, but everyone watching could feel the edges fraying. The Yorkshire pensioner stepped forward, clearing his throat. Son, he said quietly to Liam, take the advice and walk away. That man's doing a job, and you're making a show of yourself. For a brief second, the words hit. Maybe it was the man's age. Maybe it was the calm way he spoke. Liam's eyes flicked toward him. You know who I am? He asked again, the question sounding more brittle this time. The older man nodded. I do, he said, and I've seen men tougher than you learn respect the hard way. Don't be one of them. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment. The moment when a younger man either listened to someone who had lived longer or brushed it off to chase a few more likes on a screen. What happened next shocked everyone. Liam gave a small, humorless laugh. Respect, he repeated. I fight for a living. I risk my health every time I walk into that cage. And you're telling me, this guy, who stands still for tourists, deserves more respect than me? His hand tightened on the railing. Veins stood out in his forearm. On the other side of the railings, Thomas remained motionless, but now he could feel the weight of the rifle in his hands in a different way. Not as a symbol, not as part of the uniform, but as an object that could become very dangerous if someone tried to grab it across the barrier. The officer stepped in again, firmer now. "Sir, last warning," he said. "If you don't step away, you may be detained under public order. Do you understand?" Liam's nostrils flared. He looked from the officer to the guard, to the circle of phones. He made his choice. "I understand," he said. Then he did something that moved the situation from arrogance into threat. He swung one leg over the bottom rail. It was a small movement, a thoughtless one, from his perspective. He wasn't inside the palace grounds. Not fully. Not yet. Just balancing with one foot on the public side, one foot hooked on the lower rung. In his world, it was just a show of, "I'm not afraid." In Thomas Hale's world, it was a red flare. One more inch, and the man's center of gravity would cross the line. One more inch, and he would be close enough to reach for the weapon, or crash into the soldier, or knock him off balance. And there was something else. As he swung his leg, Liam's hand brushed the metal of Thomas's bayonet scabbard through the railings. Contact. That was the third line, the last one. Inside the bearskin, Thomas's voice moved from the back of his mind to the front. "Remember your training. Minimize harm. Neutralize threat. Protect weapon. Maintain dignity of post." Outside, everything seemed to slow. The air thickened. The officer shouted. The warden reached for Liam's arm. Erin's voice rose in a panicked cry. "Liam, stop!" But the fighter had already committed to the movement, shifting more of his weight onto the rail, body turning, right hand lifting. Not in a punch, but in that familiar guard position fighters take out of habit. He wanted the world to see him square up to a royal guard. He wanted the clip, the freeze frame, the headline. He had no idea that he was already far, far over the line that separated spectacle from something else. That was the precise second when Guardsman Thomas Hale's world narrowed to one clear, lawful decision. His boot slammed into the stone. The sound cracked through the air like a gunshot. The crowd flinched, and the guard moved. The stamp of Thomas Hale's boot echoed against the palace walls like a thunderclap. Before the crowd even registered the sound, the guardsman drove forward in one clean, decisive arc. A movement so fast and so controlled that several people watching later said they weren't sure if he'd moved at all or if their eyes had blurred. Liam Mercer felt the shift in the air a fraction of a second before impact. The rifle came up, not wildly, not aggressively, but with absolute precision. The guard stepped forward, angling the weapon diagonally. The bayonet sheathed, but the barrel aligned perfectly toward Liam's upper chest. It never touched him. It didn't have to. The power behind it forced Liam back instinctively, his spine slamming into the railings with a metallic clang. Gasps rippled across the crowd. The fighter's breath caught in his throat. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the stronger man. He felt outmatched. And then came the voice. "Stand back from the railings now, sir." Calm, authoritative, unshaken. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't rage. It wasn't an emotional response. It was procedure spoken with the weight of history behind it. Liam stared into the guard's eyes that for the first time were locked directly onto his. They were steady, focused, and utterly fearless. There was no panic, no anger, only resolve. And Liam realized the truth. This man wasn't trapped behind rules. He was protected by them. A warden rushed forward, grabbing Liam's sleeve. "Sir, you cannot cross the barrier. Step back now." But Liam barely heard him, because something inside him had cracked. The moment his back hit that railing, the story in his head, fighter challenging an unresponsive soldier, fighter proving something, collapsed. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He wasn't even the showman. He was the one who had lost control. "What are you doing, Liam?" Erin cried, her voice high with panic. "Stop! Stop!" The Metropolitan Police officer was suddenly between them and the guard, pushing Liam back firmly. "That's enough," the officer barked. "Hands where I can see them. Step away from the barrier. Now." Liam, breathing hard, lifted his palms. For a moment, it genuinely looked like he might throw a punch. Not at the guard, but at the officer. Instinct from too many years in the cage. Too many moments where being challenged meant fighting back. But then he glanced again at the crowd. Dozens of eyes, dozens of phones. But there was no admiration in them. No excitement. Only shock. Only disapproval. Only the cold realization that he wasn't going viral as a warrior. He was going viral as a fool. The officer tightened his grip on Liam's arm. "You're being detained under public order," he said firmly. "Do not resist." Erin grabbed Liam's other arm. "Please," she begged. "Just stop. Please." For the first time since they arrived at the palace, Liam's shoulders slumped. The fight left his eyes, not because he was beaten, but because suddenly, painfully, he understood that he had crossed a line no one forgave. As the officer began guiding him away, Liam turned his head toward the guard. He expected a glare. He expected triumph. Instead, Guardsman Hale had already turned back to his neutral stance. Rifle restored, eyes forward, as if nothing had happened. The ultimate humiliation. The man he tried to provoke didn't even see him as a worthy opponent. The crowd parted as the police led Liam a few steps away from the railings. That's when the shouting started. From the crowd, not at the guard, but at Liam. "What's wrong with you? Disrespectful. You deserve to be arrested. You tried to fight a soldier, mate. Grow up." One older woman shook her head in disgust. "These guards protect our monarchy, our traditions. You don't play games with that." Her husband nodded. He wanted attention. He got it. Every step Liam took away from the railings felt heavier than the last. The officer turned him toward a designated area near the outer gate where detentions were processed. The wardens followed. Erin trailed behind, frantic and apologizing to everyone who would listen, her voice cracking under the pressure. Meanwhile, tourists drifted back toward their positions, murmuring about what they had just witnessed. But they didn't look at Liam. They looked at the guard, standing there, unmoving, professional, untouched by the chaos he had neutralized in less than a second. One man from the crowd approached a warden quietly. "Was that allowed?" he asked nervously. "The guard, pushing him back like that?" The warden nodded. "Guards must act if someone crosses a safety boundary or threatens the weapon," he explained. "That man broke multiple lines. The guard responded exactly as he was trained to. Minimal force, maximum control. He did his duty." "And the fighter? Will he be charged?" "That's for the police to decide," the warden replied. "But from what I saw, he's lucky the guard acted with restraint." Across the courtyard, Liam sat on a low stone barrier while the officer took his information. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Erin crouched beside him, finally turning her phone off. "Liam," she whispered, "why did you do that?" He didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. For a man who made a living staying calm under pressure, today he had been anything but. The officer returned his ID, his voice firm but not unkind. "You're not under arrest," he said. "But you're being issued a formal warning and removed from palace grounds. If you return today, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" Liam nodded, jaw clenched, staring hard at the ground. The officer's tone softened slightly. "You're a fighter," he said. "You know about respect. Remember it." The officer walked away. Erin stood and looked back at the palace, back at the guard. Thomas Hale hadn't moved a muscle. Not a single one. He was already back where he belonged, a still pillar of discipline against the centuries-old stone behind him. Erin swallowed hard. Then she looked down at Liam. "You went in thinking you'd win," she whispered, "but he ended it before it even began." Liam said nothing. He just lowered his head into his hands. The crowd slowly moved on, the moment fading into murmurs and half-whispered stories, but the lesson lingering in the air, heavier than the London fog. Later that night, when Liam finally returned to his hotel room, the clip was already online. Not from Erin, not from him. From strangers. Millions of views. Comments full of disappointment, anger, and mockery. But the clip didn't show Liam's bravado. It didn't show him shouting or posturing. It only showed the instant that mattered. The guard moving, the rifle rising, the fighter collapsing back against the rail. One commenter wrote, "Discipline beats ego every time." Another wrote, "Man trained to fight, vers man, trained not to fight unless he absolutely must, and that's why the guard won." And the one that stung Liam the most, he didn't lose a fight. He lost his pride. Early the next morning, long before the gates opened to the public, Guardsman Thomas Hale removed his bearskin and returned it to its stand. His shift had ended. The sun was rising. The palace stones were turning gold. He never mentioned what happened. He never needed to. His duty wasn't glory, it was service. And he had done it well. People like Liam Mercer eventually move on with their lives. Careers recover, reputations heal. Mistakes fade, but Buckingham Palace remains. The guards remain. The discipline remains. The lesson remains. And it is a simple one. Some traditions are older than your ego. Some uniforms carry more weight than your pride. Some men don't need to swing to win, because sometimes the strongest warrior, Tavon, is the one who only moves when he must.